particular honor for me this evening, in light of my fussing this morning, maybe. But we have a gentleman with us tonight that I have been waiting to hear for some time. I have heard those of you who have heard him rave about his articulate and intelligent presentation of a subject that we all hold in common, and a pride we all hold in common. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce John Hightower, Chief of Staff, the Army of Northern Virginia, Turner Ashby Camp, 1567, in Berryville, Virginia, who will make the introduction of our speaker this evening.
Thank you, John. Professor Edward C. Smith, historian, author, Lincoln Scholar, on the faculties of American University and the Smithsonian Institution, as well as sundry Civil War groups. Please let us give a warm Southern welcome to Professor Ed Smith, Black Confederate.
We have the Battle of Gettysburg, and then of course Lincoln goes up to Gettysburg in November of that year and gives his famous Gettysburg Address. Now, in the 130th 30 some odd years since the war's been over. As many of you know, there's been well over 65,000 books written on the subject. Which means if you divide 65,000 into 135 years, you average out to a little bit more than a book and a half written every day. Only Jesus Christ, and I say this in all sincerity, has been written about more often than Abraham Lincoln. And I make certain, before I come and speak to an organization like this, that there's always one amongst you that has plugged into some computer that can challenge the authenticity of my remarks. And I checked with the Library of Congress to make certain that that statistic still stands. And as of yesterday, it had Jesus running just a little bit ahead of Abraham Lincoln. But he's catching up, and of course he is not too far behind. Now with the movie Glory and the popular Ken Burns series, I was one who believed that this would spawn a great deal of interest in the Civil War among blacks, that they would flock to the literature, read some of the material written by blacks like myself, and much to my disappointment, that has not happened. In Washington, D.C., where we have Howard University, many blacks don't even know who Howard University is named after. Most of them believe it was some runaway slave who bought stock in some cotton options and made a fortune and donated it to the federal government, who then built a university in its name. My wife graduated from the school, and I often asked her, well, when you were at the library, you walked up the stairs and you saw this beautiful photograph, a painting of General Oliver Otis Howard decked out in his resplendent Union uniform. Who in God's name did you think this was? Well, it just didn't cross your mind. It didn't cross many people's minds. Anyway, to make a long story short, part of the reason why I'm the only black here, and I'm not afraid because I feel I'm in the presence of friends, is because even if I were to be speaking tonight at a union gathering, the complexion, or lack thereof, would be pretty much the same. Because we have just not taken the war seriously, and it's unfortunate. Which means now that you have heard that brief introduction to my introduction, you'll understand why I'm going to start my presentation by going all the way back to the founding of the country in 1608, when the first settlement was established on the coast of Virginia. Because a mere 11 years later, in 1619, the first blacks arrived from Africa. From 1619 to the present day, we have been an inextricable part of American history. It is absolutely impossible to talk about American history without talking about black history, or talking about black history without talking about American history. I'm one of these historians that violently opposes the ghettoization of history, where you now